Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today to talk about our updated daily demand voltage reduction pilot. This is a pilot we launched a little over a year ago, and we've got some learnings and updates to share. So here's essentially what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to start and spend a little time level setting both on the background, why this is a valuable program to consider, and essentially what it is and how it saves energy. It's not a commonly implemented program, so we want to spend a little time level setting, ensuring everybody has the right context. We'll then move into the pilot thus far, the barriers we've encountered, and then the solutions we're offering to help overcome those barriers. And finally, we'll end with next steps and questions. And as Maggie said, we would ask go ahead and hold questions until the end. If you've got something burning, please go ahead and put it in chat. We do have somebody monitoring chat. So if there's something that is very timely, we'll certainly pause to address it. But generally, we ask you hold questions till the end. Uh, Quick introductions. So you have a broad cross-functional team that's been working on this pilot. So I myself have been leading it, but we also have support from engineering, planning and evaluation, and energy efficiency reps. And you'll hear from myself, from David, and from Bryce today. So, to kick off today's presentation, I want to talk about what it is we're talking about and frankly, why you should care. It is not necessarily the most straightforward of measures, but it is an potentially enormously valuable measure, and it's something that we think customers could ultimately find significant value in. So, acknowledging the landscape, or, acknowledging the elephant in the room, frankly, conservation is getting harder and more expensive to achieve. Everybody knows this. Our widget measures are gone. Conservation is more difficult and more costly. And not necessarily always targeted to utility specific needs. As needs change and capacity becomes an increasingly valuable resource, conservation measures are having to adapt to a landscape that is frankly changing. You are all facing rate pressure to keep rates low, and this is increasingly harder with growing loads and higher tier two exposure and higher power market prices. Voltage reduction measures, and what we're focusing on today is daily demand voltage reduction, but all voltage reduction measures are generally some of the least cost resources available to achieve energy and demand savings. They all produce very high average megawatt savings and significant BPA bill savings. And for the right utility who is well positioned to implement these measures, they're a great effective way to spend EEI budgets if you're challenged in doing so. They are also uniquely able to target utility specific needs. The measure we're going to be focusing on today, our daily demand voltage reduction measure, can be tailored to your specific times of need and your utility specific challenges. So it is unique amongst conservation measures, and it's a very targetable measure. And it's worth noting, I think, that the benefits available for this, frankly, pretty untapped resource are set to increase quite a lot in a post 2028 world as demand charges increase and as we see more and more utilities with tier two exposure above BPA's tier one, the tier one power we provide. So quickly to get to the very basics of what we're talking about, what is voltage and why we control it and how does it save energy? Voltage is effectively potential energy, and I will acknowledge I am not an engineer. I do not play one on TV, so if you ask detailed technical follow-up questions, I may ask some of my colleagues to answer. But voltage is essentially potential energy. Many devices use electricity based on the amount of voltage provided. As you know, utilities have to deliver voltage at certain levels. These are ANSI standards, and they are set for the utility industry. They're there to ensure reliability. We have found, however, that utilities deliver voltage higher than is required. This ensures reliability, but we've also found in some cases it's quite a lot higher than the baseline recommendations. This gives us an opportunity to reduce that voltage, and when we say that, reducing the voltage will still be well above the mandated energy ANSI voltage standard, but by reducing that voltage, you create energy savings for some loads. And I will acknowledge this isn't all loads. Things like resistance heat certainly don't save energy when you reduce their voltage, they simply run longer. But many things, like appliances, do absolutely save energy as you reduce voltage. Voltage control products started many, many decades ago with demand voltage reduction. DVR, demand voltage reduction, was initially a demand response product, and BPA utilities, as far ago as the 80s and 90s, had been lowering voltage during times of high need to reduce demand. Uh, this This program or this approach generally lowers voltage a modest amount, between 3 and 5%. And it's one of the cheapest DR products available. And end users, unlike many other DR products, they simply don't notice when you implement. So this is a long-standing method utilities have used to address voltage needs for many, many decades. This evolved into conservation voltage reduction, or CVR. This is a energy conservation measure BPA has offered for many, many years. It has been offered to utilities for as long as I've been at BPA, and that's 15 years now, and I believe quite a long time before then. This is a more modest voltage reduction, basically 1 to 2%, but it's implemented at all hours of the year. This produces substantial energy and demand savings, and BPA provides a very, frankly, attractive incentive, which is 33 cents per kilowatt saved. This is only provided in year one, though. It's a large incentive, but provided only in year one. And we assume that utilities will implement this voltage reduction in a perpetual fashion. It's intended to be long term. We have to acknowledge that CVR has had minimal uptake. This is something that the utilities have noted drives down revenue. As you sell less power, you make less revenue, and utilities are faced with a challenge in where to invest their conservation dollars. And when faced with an opportunity to, provide direct and meaningful benefit to one of its customers versus implementing a very small reduction for all of customers, utilities have typically chosen to implement those transactional individual conservation measures rather than CVR. So it's had very low uptake. So what we're talking about today, what we're primarily focusing on, is something we call daily DVR. And this is an evolution of both of those things, of the initial demand response measure, DVR, and the conservation measure, CVR. Daily DVR is simply doing DVR every day. It's not a voltage reduction that's permanent. It's not installed at all times like CVR. It is a schedule of voltage reductions that happen at times of anticipated high prices or high needs, or when energy savings value provide the most value for the utility. So it's a targeted measure during times of need, but not at all times. This does produce significant energy and demand savings, and importantly, it reduces BPA's utility bills. And we'll get into that in a moment, but that's where most of the value comes from. As I mentioned, it's extremely flexible and can be adjusted to maximize benefits for each utility. This is not a one-size-fits-all program, and it can be very targeted to the time of day, time of year. Any time a utility has a need, DVR can be targeted to address that. It also helps minimize lost revenue compared to CVR because it only targets those times in which prices are high or need is high, while not being operated when need is lower. It minimizes that lost revenue that utilities experience with CVR. As I mentioned earlier, the benefits of this sort of approach will increase in a post-2028 world as the cost for demand and capacity increases. And it's worth noting that this is not an either-or proposition. Daily DVR and CVR can be combined to maximize your benefits. With a modest CVR and a targeted DVR approach, you can combine both measures to maximize your benefits and maximize your incentive. As I mentioned, power costs are the primary drivers of benefit. So obviously, this is an energy efficiency measure, and BPA will provide an energy efficiency incentive payment. But about 75% of the financial benefit comes from avoided energy demand and transmission costs. So this is savings on your bill from BPA. And it's also worth noting that utilities who are exposed to Tier 2 will see significantly greater benefits than those only paying for Tier 1 power. And these benefits will grow as loads grow and as Tier 2 exposure increases. So what I want to do now that I've done some level setting is jump into the pilot thus far. So as I mentioned earlier, this is a pilot program that we launched in 2024. And so during that time, we've learned a lot and we've made a lot of improvements. That's what I want to focus on today. So it was launched in 2024, about this time, about a year ago. And we had significant interest from some customers. This was something that quite a lot of customers reached out to us and were very interested in pursuing. Ultimately, however, we failed. Nobody has implemented this program since we launched it. And we learned a lot, and hopefully the updates we've made will make this easier going forward. So what did we hear and why has this not been successful thus far? First of all, we heard concerns over value. So utilities expressed concerns about lost revenue, and frankly, we did not have a good way to quantify the value this provided in terms of your bill savings. We made statements like, this will save you money on BPA bills, but we really couldn't effectively demonstrate how much. So utilities, having to take us at our word and in talking to management, decided maybe this isn't the best value for my energy efficiency dollars. We also found that many utilities were limited by infrastructure limitations. So this does require an updated distribution system and the ability to actively manage your voltage. And if you don't have those things, or you don't plan to get those things in a foreseeable future, this may not be a great measure for you. We found that this is potentially a good fit for everybody in terms of value, but does require some infrastructure. And finally, data. So this is a conservation measure, and we don't hand wave when it comes to savings. We need to measure how much savings we achieve. And so we need to understand some significant data about the implementation in your distribution system. And this requires relatively granular data and the ability to store it and transfer it, which created some real significant challenges for some customers. So these are the barriers we found and why we think we've not had a whole lot of uptake or frankly any uptake. And this is what we focused on creating solutions for. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic over to David Schippermer, who's going to talk about our evolution and how we can help you going forward.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Dave. So yes, I'm going to talk about the very exciting thing, talking about how we are going to help you quantify your benefits from implementing daily DVR or CVR. Can you go to the next slide?
Yep.
But yeah, we want to partner with you to implement this measure, and BPA can provide support to explore this and help you adopt this measure. Like Dave said, we can help you understand if this measure is a good fit. There are some utilities that this is a really good fit for, at least like that's our model said. There are some utilities that have upgraded distribution systems. That makes it a lot easier. And again, we also now have the tools to demonstrate the potential financial value that's available to you. We can quantify your avoided costs and we can quantify your costs from lost revenue and other things. We can kind of get into that, but we try to take into account every possible cost and every possible benefit, put those into something that spits out the net financial benefit. So again, for some utilities, it's really good. We also want to help you plan implementation and target the times of greatest impact. Our tool it has some default assumptions, but what's great about daily DVR is you can adjust anything to make it to where it's best for you. We don't have insight into that for every utility. So like we offer default recommendations and kind of default things. So we'll give you a tool and you can play with it and we can help you um, design something that has the greatest impact for you. And again, we also have increased support for setup costs of BPA. We'll get into this a little bit, but we are increasing the incentive in the first year. We're doubling the incentive to 5 cents per kilowatt hour. And then we also have additional funds set aside for support and whatever else. We can talk about it that's based on kind of need and a few other things. But we have some extra support. And then we also want to make it easier to get you the data. So you will need a database to get the data and transfer the data, and then make it as easy as possible to conduct the M&V. So basically, you'll send us a database extract at some frequency, probably once a year, maybe a little bit earlier or maybe a little bit more frequently at the beginning, and then that's it. And then we calculate everything, and then we send you the incentive. In the meantime, you are raking in the bill savings. Okay, so who is daily DVR good for? Again, this is a little bit of a reiteration, but utilities with updated distribution and SCADA systems are really, really good candidates because there can be some upfront technology costs that like you may have to do. So if you've already done those, if you kind of have a modern distribution system and a SCADA system that has really good insight into your end of line voltage, you're a really good candidate. Also, utilities with current or growing tier 2 exposure. Again, conservation is really good in general, for utilities with tier 2 exposure because those are your marginal costs. So utilities that have this is just a great conservation measure to reduce those. And so, and you can also play around with this in the tool. And again, if you meet with us, we can show you kind of how to do this. And then also, it's really good for utilities that want to use conservation to address any constraints they have. So if these are capacity constraints at certain feeders or certain substation, this measure is just really flexible. So once you kind of get into this, you can be like, oh, it would be great if this load, maybe I don't want to get too over my seats here, but like if this load of this substation was a little bit lower, daily DVR is a means to help that. And then also, again, utilities looking to spend their EEI dollars. This is a great way to consistently spend your EEI dollars after you set it up each year. Okay, let's talk about the tools. So most utilities see significant financial benefit from implementing daily DVR. We have this graph on the right, and I'll kind of talk through that for a little bit. So basically, on the left axis, we have the final year benefit and cost ratio, and then on the right axis, we have final year cumulative net benefits. What this means is that we put all the benefits and all the costs on top of each other. So the benefit, the cost ratio, you get a number. If it's over 1.0, or sorry, if it's exactly 1.0, that means you're putting in a dollar and you're getting a dollar back. If you're, for some utilities, you're putting in a dollar and you're getting $1.50 back. But most utilities, you're putting in a dollar and you're getting about $1.26 back. That's pretty good. And this is actually in our most conservative scenario. We have a couple of different scenarios, which we're not going to go into a ton in this webinar, but we can talk about it later if you decide to meet with us or play around with the tool. Anyway, so these tools, we have tools to define each utility's specific value. And generally, it's pretty large. While the benefit cost ratios, the BC ratios, sometimes they're floating around like 1.25 or whatever, but like the actual nominal dollars is quite large. And again, our analysis found that 92% of utilities would benefit financially from this. So these tools are just really easy to use and customizable, and they show you what you would expect to get from implementing this measure. We can go to the next slide. We'll talk about the tools a little bit. Basically, the tools are designed again at like a few levels. One level is kind of just a high level where you can put in kind of your total load, and then it spits out like basically your total technical potential, and it puts that into dollar values. This screenshot right here is all the default values. These are basically all the required inputs to calculate daily DVR. So you can accept the default to just get like a high level picture, or you can dive into all the inputs and make changes and do everything you want. Also work with BPA. We would love to help you out with that. But the tool has extensive documentation listing all of our assumptions and sources. It's customizable, but it's also just really easy to use. And there's no macros required. And if you go to the next slide, if you use all the defaults, there's actually only one number that you need to put into the tool, which is your substation load in megawatt hours. If you give us that and you accept the default, you can see what your financial benefits would be from implementing daily DVR, CVR, and actually both of them. We have 3 tools for kind of all scenarios at the substation level. So if you tell us your substation load, then we will tell you based on the default input your net financial benefits. And then if you want, you can customize it further to get like a really, really accurate view of what you would expect to get from implementing this measure. If we go to the next slide, though, what this slide does is this is kind of the output of the tool. So this is a real substation that we worked with from a real utility. We had like early versions that we kind of piloted out to some utilities that were interested. And from one substation, based on this load, over 10 years, our model, it gives a little range. Like there's some values that are uncertain, so we do give a range. But like in the scenario where BP26 rate structure, the structure of the rates are held flat. So it does grow with inflation and kind of some other inputs, but the structure itself is the same, right? You would expect to see about $55,000 over 10 years in net benefit just from doing this at one substation. If we go to the next slide, this is the other scenario that it outputs, which this accounts for a post 2028 rate increase as there's more tier two exposure and the demand charge, which not getting into it too much, but that's kind of already finalized. The demand charge increases. And so what you can see with this is that there's a little knot in FY28 and it starts going up a little bit sharper. That's because things are going to get, well, hard to say the future, but like right now, things are getting more expensive. And the way things are set up in 2028, there is a substantial increase. So doing this now presents a lot of benefits later. So it basically results, this was about 102,000, previous one was about 55,000 from one substation. We go to the next one. Yeah, so that's kind of the way the tools work. And I think just again wanting to emphasize that like utilities, we have three tools. And what we found in our analysis is that CVR and daily DVR work really well together. And basically utilities have choice to customize these voltage optimizations to their needs. So if you look at this graph on the right, this is just like lifetime cumulative net benefits. And basically what you can kind of see is like kind of the structure of these measures. So daily DVR has lower first year benefits, but it kind of just consistently increases. Conservation voltage reduction, on the other hand, it has a large upfront incentive, right? Because you're getting 33 cents a kilowatt hour for implementing it. And then its net benefits decrease over time for most utilities, some utilities. Overall, still positive for a lot of utilities. And also to note, this graph is like filtered for the utilities that our model is saying this is positive. So this is not all utilities, but like for a lot of utilities, it is the benefits are positive, or the net benefits are positive. Anyway, so the CVR decreases over time because of lost revenue, still overall positive, and daily DVR increases over time because daily DVR minimizes lost revenue. Again, this is also in our kind of conservative scenario where the BP 26 rate structure is held flat post 2028. Anyway, the point of all this is that like we can help you decide what works best for you. It might be easier to start with modest CVR and get a large incentive because the incentive that you get is quite large, and then make targeted daily DVR upgrades over time. So maybe start with one substation or a couple substations where you're implementing CVR, and then you can do additional daily DVR at those same substations, or you can do daily DVR at other substations. Really, the world is your oyster, and the tools will give you the means to kind of plan that out and calculate it at a high level. We go to the next slide. And then again, we just want to kind of take a step back on like the way those graphs work is that again, 77% of the benefits come from bill savings. This is a daily DVR I'm showing you, but when you kind of combine daily DVR and CVR, and then you have a combined total, the numbers are all about the same. But again, daily DVR has the most bill savings because it's minimizing lost revenue. Or sorry, it has the most net benefit because it's minimizing lost revenue. The bill savings are the same. Sometimes the lost revenue drives down net benefits for CVR. Sorry, it can be a little confusing. But anyway, 77% of the benefits from daily DVR come from bill savings, and about 23% come from a yearly incentive. So the incentive is really nice, but most of the value comes from bill savings. And again, we are here, BPA is here to provide support to help utilities understand daily DVR's value, but also CVR and how everything kind of fits together. I think I got one more slide. Yes, and this is kind of just to summarize like what all we can do to support. So again, the first year incentive is 5 cents per kilowatt hour. It's an increase from 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So it is doubled, which is actually really good. And this is to kind of acknowledge that there are some additional costs with getting this going. An increased incentive is helpful, and we're doing this for the first year to try to spark participation. We also have better defined system requirements. So, like, if you decide to work with us, we can tell you exactly what we need uh, to implement, exactly what the data needs to look like, and help you kind of with that process the whole way. We can also give technical guidance. So we can help talk with distribution engineers or SCADA vendors. We can provide support for setting up databases and transferring data, and then also using the tools and understanding all the scenarios. Uh, Finally, we have, like I said, cost share potential. So based on need and resources, BP has some funds set aside to help with other costs associated with this because this is a pilot program. Please go next slide. And then, okay, this is actually the final slide. This is just to kind of like for posterity. We're posting this. This just kind of has some default recommendations for daily DVR and CVR. So usually with daily DVR, you're doing a more moderate voltage reduction, so about 3 to 5%. But of course, this depends on your current levels of voltage reduction and how much you want to do it. CVR is usually minimal, so 1 to 2%. Daily DVR, you want to run for at least 5 hours per event. You also want to, it's available in all months of the year. That's kind of important to note. In the previous webinar, we put restrictions on when daily DVR can be run, but really there's no restriction. Um, it's just like we would recommend you target daily DVR when prices are high. BPA's energy prices vary throughout the year, so it makes sense to target uh, energy and demand savings when prices are higher. Kind of compared to the CVR, right? It's like you're running it all the time, so it must run all year. It must run for 10 years, and then for daily DVR, again, this is kind of our default schedule. So 5 hours in the morning peak, 5 hours in the evening peak. Remember, it's important to run during peak time so that you get the demand benefit. I think the demand benefit made up like 30% of the overall benefit, which is like more than the energy efficiency incentive. And then you also want to run it in all evening hours, Sundays and holidays. This is kind of something that we're not going to get into now, but we can kind of talk about. Basically, those, if you look at BPA bills, evening hours, Sundays and holidays, or light load hours are more expensive now. So you want to run it when things are more expensive. And that is a way to kind of maximize your benefits, but of course, it always depends on how you end up doing it. And I think with that, I'm going to pass it to Bryce, who's going to bring us home.
Very good. Thank you, David. Um, Here, can we go to the next slide, please? Just diving right into the why you care. So, as Dave Moody mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we all know that energy efficiency is getting harder and harder to procure. Much of the low-hanging fruit has been picked over the years, and so that really positions this daily DVR pilot as a great opportunity to achieve low-cost energy savings in a time when it's just kind of more difficult to do. And it gives us a roadmap for doing that over the medium long term, the next 10 years. So we're pretty excited about that. There's significant regional potential also. So as was mentioned before, this makes sense in terms of net benefits for the vast majority of the Bonneville utility customers. And that's exciting just to think that because it's so widely applicable, it could really potentially add up to something very significant if there is wide uptake. As mentioned earlier, we've gone back to the drawing board to address a number of previous barriers when we initially rolled this out a year ago. Daily DVR may help utilities with different areas of concern, whether it's demand response, keeping costs low, or finding a way to spend more of your EEI dollars. So in that way, this can be tailored to your specific needs. So there's room for more discussion with us and internally on your end to figure out what are the needs that you have and how can we tailor this to really target those specifically. We hope that, from this webinar, you can see that there is value for you, the utility. That much should be obvious, and we can explore that more with the tools afterwards. Value for your customers, by implementing daily DVR and or conservation voltage reduction, there are going to be energy savings at your end use customers, although they may be so small that they don't really notice any difference. But the thing is that when you add that all up in aggregate, that really amounts to something more significant. And because the utility is avoiding higher costs, in other words, the utility is keeping their operating costs low, that should allow you to keep the rates lower for your customers, which of course they all want. And then, as we mentioned before, the benefits of adopting this pilot gives you a benefit now, but that benefit is only likely to grow in the future as the price of power becomes more expensive, especially those of you who are exposed to the higher cost tier 2 power. So it just makes more sense in those scenarios. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, as always, it's a great idea to contact your ear first. When in doubt, your energy efficiency reps are here to help you and to guide you on next steps. If you want to, express your interest and you would like to see the net benefit tool that David Trippimer was sharing, we can get those tools in your hands so that you can look at them, play with them, ask us questions. So the ears can talk with you about sort of the benefits and broad strokes of adopting this measure. But then, of course, as things get a little more technical, if you want to talk about data and infrastructure needs, BPA technical staff is available to you, and the ears can sort of work with them to set up calls, meetings, answer questions via email, whatever it is that you need. We've got a crack team here that's available and very eager to talk about these sorts of details with you, because I guess we're really excited because, as you can tell from the two Davids here running through this material before, they have a pretty deep knowledge of this stuff, and we've been playing with a lot of these details, and I think that's a really exciting feature, is that we can tweak your implementation to really target your specific needs, and we can help you do that. Lastly, I'll say that, keep in mind this is a pilot. So we have already gone back to the drawing board and revised a bunch of things to hopefully address the barriers that we heard from your initial feedback. And we'll continue to make positive changes as we learn things from your early implementation of this pilot. You can start small. It doesn't have to be diving into the water head first all at once. You can dip a toe into the water, so to speak, feel it out, see how things are working for you, course correct, tweak some things over time, and then scale up later down the road when it makes more sense for you, when you become more familiar, when you understand what you're getting from it, what you're looking for. We can scale up over time.